Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's Geek Corner Extra, place we talk about a place we talk about anything and everything that is geek, whether it be TV, comics, movies, or video games, and particularly any theories about your favorite things that are geek, whether it be TV, comics, movies, or video games. And this week, I'm going to talk about a very hot button topic that is been basically talked about amongst fans for years and years now. It flared up again during Convergence, and that is the idea of Superman, Clark Kent, Kal-El of Krypton, and Lois Lane having a child together. And I've heard so many people rallying against why they can't. And the reason I say it flared in Convergence, and then as y'all know, heard me talk about this program before, Convergence Superman, he and Lois finally had their own child. And it's not adopted from the Phantom Zone or anything like that. This is their actual blood. This is their actual flesh and blood together. I said this is their actual child this time. And of course, I know y'all know what happened with that at the end of Convergence. I don't need to go into that again. But I've heard so many folks talk about, how in the world this couldn't possibly happen, how this is impossible, how this is just, it's like this, this can't happen for this reason, that reason. I keep hearing, and just to give you a warning, this might be a little bit of just a taste of adult subject matter in it, but not anything really inappropriate, but just to let you know, just a little just a little adult subject matter, so just use your own discretion. So, but as I said, there are folks talking about, they can't possibly happen because of his super sperm, and it would hurt Lois Lane and all that stuff. It would just basically hurt Lois. They're genetically incompatible and stuff. Well, for years and years, it has been that way, but there have also been instances where it's a very big possibility for Superman and Lois to actually have a child. And I've actually gone through a lot of the old DC stories from the past, be it Elseworlds and actual canon, has been actually recognized as actual canon, times that he and Lois have actually had a child. And in doing research, I've actually found out how it actually could happen, and how they've actually made it possible for for Superman and Lois to actually have a child together. And let me give you just the examples. I've actually found 6 examples. Let me see here. 6 examples here of when he and Lois have had a child together, and and some of these have since been put as like different continuities, different worlds, different timelines, and everything. But these are still instances of where they had a kid together, and the first one obviously being Convergent Superman, in which they named the child Jonathan Samuel Kent. They had a child together in the confines of this dome that they have, in the confines of this dome, they have managed to have a child together and everything. And that's the one where everybody keeps asking the question. Like that, everybody keeps saying, this is impossible. It's super sperm. It keeps him from impregnating Lois and everything. I don't think that's like I said, again, there is a possibility of why they had. I have my own theory of why why it is that they have managed to. He has managed to impregnate Lois, but I'll get to that in just a minute. Because all these seem to tie together. Because all ones I'm about to tell you kind of seem to have one little bitty factor in there. As to how, well, most of these anyway, have one little itty bitty factor that all factors them all together of how Lois wound up having his child, or at least expecting it. That's at least 4 out of 6 of these anyway. But the next one on the list is Superman Returns. Is in Superman Returns. Lois's child that she supposedly had. They're supposedly making it look he's had with as if she's had with Perry White's son Richard, or his nephew, whichever it is in this movie. His son Richard, Jason White. And of course, spoiler alert, as everybody knows in that movie, Jason wound up exhibiting great strength. It was just superhuman, Superman strength in that movie. It just suddenly manifested all of a sudden out of a fit of asthma. And as everybody knows, that this movie, you could pretty much they said that Superman 2 is supposed to be the it's supposed to be in a vague continuity, but this is supposed to be almost a sequel to 1 and 2 here, and I think anybody knows 2 pretty much probably gets a hint of how this could have happened. So you could definitely figure it out. So you definitely figure that one out. And the next one is Son of Superman. Well, I know I said that there was like 4 on this list in which you pretty much can figure out how it happened, but I was wrong. There's 3 on this list in which you could get a hint of how it happened, but Son of Superman is not one of them, but still, again, it's another example in which Superman and Lois had a child together, had a son together, particularly a son, but once again had a child together named John Kent, and he winds up exhibiting all the powers and abilities of his dad, and winds up becoming the new Superman. But still, that's another instance of he and Lois having a child together. And I can't explain it, but he does. But they still, once again, they had a child together somehow. And as I said, he becomes the new Superman in that story because of the fact that Superman disappears for a while. But I don't want to go through the entire story on here because it does sound like a good story. So definitely go read it. Next one is one of the most famous Superman stories of all time, kind of the one that closed out the pre-Crisis on Infinite Earths era of the Superman part of the DC universe, and that is Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow, the classic story written by Alan Moore. And once again, this is another story where you can pretty much figure out how it could have happened, and ties into the other 2 from earlier. But again, I'm going to explain all that when I get to it. But still, another example of he and Lois having a child together. I know, I'm going to say it, spoiler alert, I'm spoiling it for you here. Another instance of he and Lois having a child. But I'll get to the explanation in just a minute. The next one is from Injustice Gods Among Us, particularly the comic book. You really wasn't determined in this one what gender or sex the child was. It really was. You didn't know if it was going to be a boy. You really couldn't tell if it was going to be a boy or a girl or not, because Joker pretty much killed them before they were ever born. And I say it because I say you don't know really what gender was, because it differed from the movie and from the game and the comic. Because in the game, you hear him identify the baby as a boy, his son. But in the comic, you don't even really hear if it's a boy or girl or not, or a son or a daughter. Though they did do a story later on in the comics about what could have been had he managed to save Lois and his child from the Joker, because later on she gives birth to a healthy baby girl, which they named Laura Lane Kent, and she winds up growing up to become a big superhero like her dad, Superman. So, but again, I can't explain, but it's still, for a while, for real, they were going to have a kid together, even though they went and spoiled it again, or they didn't. And since Superman down a path of the dark side, in which he winds up start off by killing the Joker, still you don't really know if the kid was going to be a boy or a girl or not. You really don't know. But still, again, and you don't know how it happened. But still, this is another instance of them going to have a kid. So definitely, and one that I kind of begrudgingly put into this list here, because I don't really recognize this as continuity anyway. I feel like this is being forced. But even in the New 52, dare I say it, there was a story from the Superboy comics in which told the story of an alternate timeline in the New 52, in which Superman and Lois get together. I guess they get together. I don't know if they're married or not, but they get together, and Lois winds up bearing him a child, a son, named let me see here once again my notes, John Lane Kent. But they and again, they don't explain how it happens. They really don't give an explanation of how this wound up happening. But they wound up having a kid together. But they also explained that his genetic makeup, his human Kryptonian genetic makeup is so unstable that by age 5 he winds up dying. But that goes into an even more complicated story. But the fact is that he's found by another alien. He's made better. He's raised up as his son and everything. But still, come right down to it again. There's another. I think he was wiped out of history or something from that story. From what I read of synopsises for it, synopsis from that story. He's wiped from history or whatever. But either way, he was, for a while, a son of Lois Lane Clark Kent, or Kal-El, I should say, Superman. But still, there are 3 stories here. These are just 6 stories. I imagine there are probably more than I'm missing, but and of course there's all the stories of he and Wonder Woman going on to have kids and everything. And there may be a couple of imaginary stories where he and Lana have kids. But like I said, I just picked ones here that really happen in like they're not like imaginary stories from like the Silver Age or something like that. These are actual timelines, and I know one of them's an Elseworlds, but still that could end up being in the multiverse somewhere. You don't ever know when they may run into them one day, but still, it's just a possibility that somehow somebody could stumble over the space-time continuum into another reality and could find them having a child together. And I said these are just 6 examples of that. Even the New 52, if you want to go that far. But there's 3 on here that they really don't give an explanation of how they could have possibly had a child together, and those being Son of Superman, Injustice, and the New 52 John Lane Kent stories. They never really explain how they could have had a kid together, but there are 3 on here that they have a perfectly logical explanation. I mean, it's staring folks right in the face, and they don't even realize that there's, like I said, there's 3 stories on there that actually do explain how they could have possibly had a child together. And of course, and they are Convergent Superman, Superman Returns, and Whatever Happened to Man Tomorrow. All 3 of those have one common factor in them. And I know folks keep saying, and again, folks keep saying, "Oh, it's his Kryptonian sperm, it's super sperm. That's not going to take. It's not going to It's not going to take. It's incompatible with human DNA." Or is there or as they say on the South Park episode, Kryptonian and human DNA just don't splice in kind of a short term. But in these 3 instances, they all have one common factor of how it happened. And that common factor is the fact that at the times that in which they conceived a child together, Superman was powerless. Superman's powers, in one way or another, were stripped. Like in Superman Returns. I said earlier that it's a sequel to Superman 2. And as y'all remember, and from what I've seen, Superman 2, the Superman 2 they're based on is the original Richard Lester theatrical version, in which he steps into a machine in the fortress that bombards him, that basically saturates every inch of his DNA with red solar radiation, hence stripping him of everything that made him super. He is nothing but a mere mortal now. And he and Lois go and have them a night together where they sleep together. And of course, as you know, later on in the movie, he gets his powers back and everything, but still the seed is there. And the way they've expanded on it in Superman Returns is like not too long after all that happened, Superman gets gone for 5 years, going off searching for Krypton. They possibly found Krypton, so he goes and searches for himself, stays gone 5 years. Well, in that time, Lois has basically had a child. And of course, as y'all know by the movie and everything, he comes back. She's got a kid and the way it looks is that she's had a very sickly child with Richard White. And as y'all find out later on in the movie, of course, he smashed that dude with a piano, and suddenly he doesn't have asthma anymore. Basically, his powers start to manifest themselves. And you figure out that this is Superman's child that was conceived in Superman 2. And basically that's my explanation for why it happened. He had no powers. He was a normal human being. And when they did it, they wound up conceiving him. He still passed DNA along to him. He's still a half human, half Kryptonian child. And it's just, and the reason why I'm guessing, I'm gonna say it, that explains why he's so sick in the movie. Why they say he's so fragile. What it is, that's why he's so sickly, is the fact that the Kryptonian, when I say the Kryptonian DNA and the human DNA are clashing so much, and basically the Kryptonian part is basically fighting against the human side to manifest itself. And finally, it manifests itself in the moment where he smashes the dude with the piano, and that's when he basically starts not being so sickly. But again, he starts being, all of a sudden he looks and he's like, I don't need this anymore, and just throws the thing down or just drops it. But still, that's my explanation for why they had a kid in there. He was mortal, and he just passed down his DNA to Jason. And that's also my explanation for why they had a kid in Whatever Happened to Man Tomorrow, where you see at the end of the book him crushing a piece of coal into a diamond. Even though, and the reason that's the same reason, if y'all read the story, he basically goes into a chamber of gold kryptonite, and as y'all know, gold kryptonite strips him of his abilities permanently. And in all those years, he basically quits being Clark Kent, because Clark Kent's been exposed. His Clark Kent identity has been exposed. He quits being Superman because he accidentally killed Mixia Spitlick, and he said basically I can't be Superman anymore, and he just strips himself of his abilities, and of course Clark Kent and Superman just disappear. But still, he gets to be with Lois Lane. He comes up with this Elliot, something, whatever his first name is, Elliot, auto mechanic identity for himself, in which he lives with Lois Lane. And you see at the end of the book a kid that looks suspiciously like Superman at a young age, crushing a piece of coal into a diamond. Shows that this is Superman, but he's just taken on another identity and is now living a happily ever after life with Lois Lane. And again, there's another instance of him and Lois having a child together, and the reason for it being he's mortal. And he went on there and completely stripped himself of his powers permanently. He's completely stripped of his powers, making him perfectly mortal and perfectly compatible with Lois Lane. And it just so happens, once again, you have another instance of him, though mortal, passing down his alien DNA, and it manifesting itself in the next generation, even though he doesn't have it anymore. He neutralizes himself. That doesn't exactly make it neutral in the next generation. So again, powerless. Once again, powerless equals baby. Equals and a particular superpowered baby. And of course, the main reason for this particular Geek Corner Extra Convergent Superman, in which he and Lois once again have a child. And I know by the end of the book, he's back to being Superman again. But think about this. Think about this once again. These domes, whoever is superpowered under these domes, have been stripped of said superpowers. This includes Superman. And of course, y'all know the story all along. He's been wandering around powerless around the city, still trying to make a difference, still trying to protect the people of the Gotham City they're stuck in. And the dome finally, and he's been powerless. Suppose that they've been under the domes for like a year, and in that year's time, of him being completely and totally powerless, he and Lois have managed to, within 9 out of the 12 months they've been in that dome, they managed to conceive a child together, who just so happens by the end of this book is time to come. It's time for the baby to be born. And again, like I said, in the 9 months, they've managed to conceive a child together, and the reason for that is he's powerless. Whatever nature these domes had, they had the ability to neutralize alien DNA and render him powerless. And he could not process DNA. Shoot, like I said, as soon as the dome dropped, his powers were stripped of him, because he was cut off from any source of power. But the minute the dome dropped, his powers came back. And as I said, during that 1 year of him being powerless, it gave him the ability to be able to impregnate Lois Lane. Like I said, again, he's mortal, and they wind up conceiving a child together. As whether or not Jonathan Samuel Kent will ever have his powers, we'll never know, because the whole thing was basically negated by the ending of Convergence, which again, I'm not going into that train wreck debacle, but still, for the time being, he and Lois had a child together by means in that he was powerless. He was a mere mortal, and they conceived. And I said the other 3 examples I mentioned, they don't mention it, but these 3 examples right here, Convergent Superman, whatever happened to man tomorrow, and Superman returned, the one common factor there, he was powerless. He was a powerless mortal at the time that he conceived a kid with Lois Lane. And all 3 times, again, that's how they managed to have a kid. And again, that's the I'm gonna say the reason they start, a couple of them start manifesting powers, they just passed it along. He just passed down the genes. He just passed down his genes to process sunlight and have powers and abilities far beyond those of mortal men, just like his dad. And just because his powers are gone doesn't mean they're not going to have any. Like I said, but the one thing I really would love to see expanded on is whether or not Jonathan Samuel Kent wound up being powered like his dad. But most likely he probably was going to. He was going to be a super kid. He was going to be the super son of Superman, just like the other ones I mentioned. But that's my explanation for why they had a kid together, is because at the time it happened, Superman had no powers. And again, with Convergence, everybody tried to explain why Convergence said, well, wouldn't Superman, when the dome dropped, wouldn't the baby's powers kick in? Not necessarily. Who's to say that the kid would even have powers inside the womb? There's a lot of interpretations of Superman where he probably would have had powers the moment he grew on up in age inside the mother's stomach, inside Lois's stomach. Yes, there probably would have been another explanation and other interpretations. He probably would have manifested powers inside the womb. But in these instances here, no, because, and I'll tell you why. Because think about Convergence for a second. Just because he's been in the womb for 9 months and he's about to come does not mean that he's going to all of a sudden manifest powers the minute the dome drops. It's not going to happen. And as you've seen with like Superman Returns, he was like probably 5, maybe, I think he was probably about 5, 6 years old when Jason White was like a sicky little kid, until all of a sudden out of nowhere he manifests super strength. It took him 5 years to manifest any powers. And the kid John Elliott, at the end of Whatever Happened to Man Tomorrow, he was a little baby outside of the womb when he manifested super strength by crushing a piece of coal into a diamond. And again, with Convergence, he wouldn't have just all of a sudden manifested powers all of a sudden. And my reasoning for that is why they wouldn't have manifest power so quick. The human body does not process yellow sun radiation like a Kryptonian does. Meaning that, and the only way a human processes yellow sun radiation is via vitamin D, as opposed to Kryptonian, who is like a living solar battery that soaks up, whose cells soak up yellow sun radiation like a sponge, and it gives them fantastic powers. A human being, all the most they're going to get out of sun's rays is vitamin D and a severe sunburn. So again, they wouldn't have the baby would not be soaking in radiation from inside the mother's womb. He would not. He simply wouldn't. He would have to be exposed for years to even get an iota of strength. He would have to be exposed to direct sunlight in order for his powers to show themselves, and it would take probably upwards, I would say probably about 6 months for him to show any superhuman abilities. I say anyway. But as I said, in other interpretations, he probably would have been exhibiting power from inside the womb, yes. But in the more modern interpretations, it would take him years to even start processing solar radiation and even exhibiting an iota of super strength. it would be, I said, it'd take probably 6 months to a year. Also depends on interpretation, like with Superman Returns. It took him about 5 or 6 years before he even showed any signs of Superman type feats. But again, this is just my theory on this. These are just my theories. But to me, this is how he and Lois could have a kid. Is for him to be powerless. And again, that's just my explanation for it. But still, it's a great topic to talk about and discuss amongst yourselves, definitely. But that's it. This is just my theory. But what do y'all think about this? Do y'all agree with this? Do y'all have disagree with this? Do y'all have a completely different theory on this? Let me know. As always, if you have comments, drop them in the comment box. I would love to hear your take on this. I would love to hear your explanation. I'd love to hear your theories. Let's discuss. I would love to hear it. I would love to hear what y'all have to say on this subject. And I guess that's all for this edition of Geek Corner Extras. And y'all have any comments about the show whatsoever? Y'all have any or if y'all have any great ideas for topics and subjects to talk about, drop me a comment in the comment box. I would love to hear what y'all have to say. I would love to. I'm always looking for fresh new ideas and topics to talk about, discuss, and analyze on here and on Geek Corner Minute. So definitely drop them in the comment box. I would love to hear what y'all have to say, and I would love to hear your ideas. And you never know, we may be on the next edition of Geek Corner Extra. So definitely drop them in the comment box. I would love to hear your ideas. And as always, like, subscribe, share with all your friends, tell all your friends. And I'll see y'all next time.